What should you pay for Michter's allocated whiskey? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So we've got a fun lineup today in front of us of Michter's allocated whiskeys. This is part of a larger series on the channel where we talk about what should you pay. Really, it's an attempt to answer that question for a lot of different bourbon brands. Specifically, they're harder to find bottles because the truth is, a lot of things get marked up these days. A lot of FOMO drives us to go out and hunt these things down. And I want you guys to know from my perspective what I see as a fair price for these types of bottles. Now, when it comes to Michter's, I've really got things I love about the brand and things I don't love about the brand. When it comes to what I don't love, it's one, a lack of transparency. We often don't know anything really about the mash bill, age statements, all that type of stuff. Not super common with Michter's. Second is their main shelfers, the rye, the bourbon, the American whiskey, the sour mash. They're all very solid, but they're in that more like $45 to $50 range. And I think they break even around there, but they're not really super high values because of the price point. But then you turn to their allocated, more elevated products. And to be honest with you, I've really fallen in love with the brand because of these kinds of whiskeys where I feel like they are delivering really, really good stuff. Sometimes there's, a question mark around the price, and I don't want you to have to overpay. So let's talk about it. But by and large, one of the things I love about Michter's is when they do something elevated, they really do tend to deliver. So let's talk about these whiskeys. First, we've got Shenk's. This is sort of a brother to Bomberger, so we'll talk about them kind of together. But Shenk's is their sour mash, essentially. It's lower proof. A lot of Michter's stuff is lower proof, but believe me, I still think it delivers a lot of flavor. This one, in terms of proof, is only 91.2 proof, so much lighter whiskey, but I get lots of like butterscotch, toffee notes. They do a lot more experimental things with Shenk's and Bombergers, so it can be a lot of fun, but they tend to be, again, very delicious and a little bit more interesting, maybe just going off in a slight tangent or different direction for you to try. Shenk's, the MSRP on this bottle is $110. I think it would be fair to pay somewhere in the $130. I think the MSRP here is pretty dead on the value. But then I would go maybe up to $130 in order to actually secure this bottle if it's your first time trying to get it. Then we go to Bombergers. Higher proof, more of a straightforward bourbon, but lots of different layers of flavor. 108 proof on this bottle here. This is the 2024, I believe. Delicious stuff. This bottle retails for $120. I think that it is generally a more impressive or powerful whiskey than the Shenk's, and therefore I personally would be willing to pay a little bit more. I think for me, this has $120 MSRP. I'd be willing to go up to $150 to get myself a bottle of Bombergers. I think it really is quite good stuff. But again, the price point's already pretty high at that $120. I don't think you need to go too much higher to secure this. Or if it's higher than $150, I feel like that's where I'd start to hesitate on this bottle. Okay, let's move on to the Michter's Toasted Barrel Bourbon. So a lot of craze around this bottle when it first came out a few years ago, and then it kind of made a resurgence last year in 2024. They've done the same thing with their sour mash. Seems like every couple of years they do a toasted. Maybe that's, it's just dawning on me that this is probably a regular cycle that they do the bourbon, the rye, the sour mash, and they do a toasted kind of rotation. That makes sense. So the bourbon, it's $110 MSRP. Here's one where I hesitate. I think in order to get it, you got to pay that $110 in a lot of places, so I think that's fair. Just go out. If you can see it at MSRP, you're not being robbed more than anybody else. For me personally, though, I see this bottle, I wish it was more like a $90 bottle. I feel like double the price of the regular old bourbon is already a lot. And really all they're doing here is putting it in that toasted barrel. It's lower proof again. I believe this one, yeah, it's 91.4 proof. So again, pretty low proof and just a lighter, less in your face expression, which is fine. But again, because of the not necessarily delivering a ton of flavor or a ton of depth, I feel like this one, MSRP is already a little bit of a stretch for me. Still good whiskey, just feels like it's a lot to say over double, almost triple what the normal bourbon is. Okay, let's move on to the barrel strengths. So first we've got the barrel strength bourbon. This one retails for $120, as does the rye. The bourbon, for me, I have already drank an entire bottle of the barrel strength bourbon, and this is my second one. I've yet to open it. I think that overall, it delivers at the value that you're looking for. The 120 makes sense to me. I'd go up to, maybe 130 to 140 in order to secure a bottle of this, but I wouldn't go much higher than MSRP. I think that when they do their barrel strength stuff, it really is unique because a lot of other Michter stuff is lower proof. So it's fun to get to taste it at this higher, more energetic proof point. What is the proof point here on this one? It's 108.8 proof. So that seems low, but Michter's does tend to go into the barrel at a pretty low proof, meaning 108 is barrel strength. Delicious stuff, but again, I wouldn't go much more than MSRP. Now let's talk about the rye. You'll notice a trend as we get into talking about the bourbons and the ryes here with the last few. I think Michter's rye is where it's at. I think Michter's rye is extraordinary stuff. I think the bourbon's really good too, but I feel like the rye is just on another level. So for me, $120 bottle of the Michter's barrel strength rye, I would pay $150 for sure. I might even go to like $160 if I was standing there in the store and saw it and that was my one chance to grab it. So $150 to $160 feels like, for the extraordinary nature of their rye, that would be worth it to me. So the barrel strength's very good. Wouldn't stretch yourself too much more over MSRP, but I do think the rye has the edge over the bourbon. Now let's talk about the big kahunas. The ones everybody really, really wants. The ones that complete a collection or make people feel like they have one of those truly unicorn bottles. I am fortunate enough to live about 90 minutes from Louisville, so I can go down to Michter's and get access to a lot of bottles if I go early, stand in the line, and try to get lucky about releases in the morning. Now, here's the big caveat to this list, especially if you're gonna go visit Michter's. They often do bundles, so they'll bundle up the bourbon, the 10-year bourbon, but you'll have to also buy it with the US 1 bourbon. So you're walking out of there paying almost $300, and there's like a slight markup on the 10-year bourbon that kind of gets calculated in there, and then you're paying a little bit more overall than you probably should, but that's their little gimmick. That's their way of getting more whiskey out the door and getting you to pay more. So, hey, they've kind of rigged it a little bit. They've got a system that benefits them, but the whiskey is so good. So let's talk about these whiskeys. Bourbon, 10-year bourbon, delicious, absolutely delicious. But I do think this is one where the actual batch matters a lot. The actual single barrel that you get. Some can be truly extraordinary. Some are just standard delicious. So you're never gonna get a bad one of these. At least I've never really heard anybody complain they had a bad one of Michter's 10. 10 years old is a fascinating number because they stuck to that since they started branding this thing. But rumor has it that there's usually 15-year plus stuff in these bottles. So like, we're talking about some well-aged whiskey. MSRP for the bourbon is $195 here in 2025. I would pay $220 for sure. I think that for almost any batch, it's worth that. If it's your one chance to go get it. I think that it's already quite expensive at MSRP, so again, I wouldn't go much more than that. For some batches, if you just knew or you had a friend or somebody who recommended it and said this was like the greatest batch I've ever tasted, then I'd be willing to stretch it up to maybe like 250. I think it does live on that level of like, when the batches are really good, they can swing with the big hitters of Russell's 15, Masters keep some of those selections. So 250 wouldn't feel out of the ballpark for a really special batch of Michter's 10 bourbon. Now let's talk about the rye. It's only $5 more MSRP, $200. So basically pinching pennies at this point when you're up at this price point. I would say for me, again, the rye has been the more standout line, standout profile from Michter's since I've really fallen in love with them. So I think that at $200 you are paying exactly what you should be for a really, really well done 10-plus-year-old rye. I'd be willing to go to $250 to get a bottle of this and add it to my collection. I think that that's as far as I'd go in terms of stretching it, because again, it's already so expensive just to get one of these, but I do think the rye is extraordinary, and I've got the 2023 here out on the table. I also have a 2024, but the 2023 for me remains one of my top 5 whiskeys of all time. It's just so flipping good. Okay, so that's a lot of discussion. I think to recap and to sort of zoom out and take the big picture here, Michter's elevated whiskeys, their limited edition allocated stuff, I feel like it delivers great flavor. Even though some of it's low proof, it's just delicious stuff. They know what they're doing when they put out these bottles. MSRP is already considerably elevated on these. They're already putting it at a price point that feels elevated, that it feels like it should deliver great value. So my recommendation is don't stretch yourself too much more over MSRP for any of these. If you do go to the distillery and you get one of those bundles, you know what? You can always make a nice gift out of that bottle that you had to buy, or it can become your next cocktail mixer. So I wouldn't feel too bad about that, because things like the Michter's 10 Rye or the barrel strength bourbon, like they deliver such good value that it's worth it if you gotta buy, you know, that regular old shelfer along with it. So that's my thoughts, everybody. But more importantly than anything else, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think I've missed the mark in sort of my analysis of this lineup here and how much to go over MSRP? Do you feel like there's any here that MSRP is already just unfair? Would love to start a discussion about Michter's and their allocated whiskeys. While you're at it, hit the like button on this video, and then if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the Bourbon Hutch. Trying to cross that 4,000 subscriber mark by the end of the year. 5,000 was our original goal, but we're really close to 4,000 now. I think we just crossed 3,800 recently. So if you guys aren't subscribed yet and you've enjoyed this content at all or any video from the Bourbon Hutch so far, the new rule is you gotta subscribe and join us for the journey. All right, that's gonna do it, everybody. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.